Dig your hand in the land and listen to my story. Feel the cotton, wheat and corn, the riches and the glory. Feel the sweat and strain of those who worked before me. Dig your hand down in the land.
Global agriculture has changed more in our lifetime than in the previous 10,000 years. But as with all change, conflicts of interest have arisen. Nowhere is this conflict more poignant than in the story of seed. In this film, we'll look at how the seed has changed in farming and in our culture from a sacred element and the giver of life to a powerful commodity used to monopolize global food production. This conflict between farming and business, between knowledge and control, between truth and propaganda, lies at the heart of the story of seed.
Once a company starts to see royalty collections from every seed, it pushes its genetically engineered crops to replace the native crops that farmers and peasants have grown over millennia.
We don't know what is in the ecosystem. We don't know what we have in it.
So it's nothing to do with feeding the world, it's nothing to do with tackling some of these huge issues we're facing today. It's about control of the food sector, of the food economy.
We begin the story of seed thousands of years ago, at a time when the earth was covered with disparate communities, isolated by mountains, seas, and deserts. A huge diversity of cultures, traditions, and languages evolved across our planet, adapting to the many different climates and ecosystems. Over centuries, the individual societies developed different ideas, cosmologies, routines, and rituals, creating a vast bedrock of diversity. Today, there are still communities around the world who give us an insight into this ancestral past.
All traditional cultures have been based on the recognition that the most important reason we are here on earth is to play our role in maintaining life in its diversity. Because seed contains life, seed has been central to reproducing the culture of life. And if you look at rituals in India, in Africa, in Latin America, seed is at the center of it.
Mwanachi bebiwa naene rimuzalela yone koroni radova rajambeu musi mutu olova ramuzalela ene apa laedela hone uitelo radele zaudi na neridove riwane zaudi musi richilima
Mbia yeto mikenge nontu mbeoni icho chumagaragia jadi ya kuruta kikongwana nontu deni jaire utikiomba kura gamburi yonko tena utena idio tena mbeu.
As our forebears diversified, so did their seeds, and thus their crops. Long before Darwin articulated his theory of evolution by natural selection, men and women around the globe were practicing this very process, re-sowing seeds best adapted to their particular environment, and thus becoming a part of the process of evolutionary change. At the center of this change was the seed, which each year would be harvested afresh and could be stored, shared, and crossed. We, are the inheritors of this rich global biodiversity.
The more we look at seed and biodiversity, the more we realize that the level of intelligence in the seed itself and in the breeding that farmers have done by working with the seed has given us not just the highest level of biodiversity, but the highest level of quality of food, the highest level of nutrition.
አንድ አይነት ቢሆን ከዘራ ጠፋ ያው የጠፋ ነገር ቅድም የተረጎምኩት ሊሆን ይችላል
Farmers breed for resilience, and therefore they breed for cooperative arrangements. They don't breed one crop. They know they must have many crops because the climate changes. They know they must have many crops because nutritional needs are diverse.
The production of food in indigenous traditions for most of human history has been to focus on advancing biological diversity.
At the turn of the 20th century, farming began to rely on technology, forcing people off their land and into the cities, as traditional skills and labour were gradually replaced by modern machinery. But as Europe became embroiled in 2 world wars, the chemicals produced for warfare were set to change the face of agriculture. With the world locked in conflict, new chemicals began to be produced in large quantities. And once peace returned, the companies producing these chemicals needed to create alternative outlets for their products. By making minor alterations, explosives and nerve agents were reformulated as fertilizers and pesticides. And chemical agronomy found its way onto farmland around the world.
ዛሬ ወቅቱ ቅመም ፈልጓል ሁሉ ምግብ እንኳን ሁሉ አይነት ታልተዘጋጀ አንድ አይነት ምግብ ቢሰጥ እንትን አይም ሁሉም የፍነሽ ማነሽ
እንዲሁ ነበር የሚዘሩት አሁን ግን
ዱሩ አሁን አይታወቅም
You're now bringing a lot of chemicals and the need continues to grow. It's not static and that need never ends.
En un momento dado los suelos empezaron a erosionarse, a desgastarse. Nosotros decimos que se hicieron drogadictos, es decir, se hicieron dependientes de estos fertilizantes.
Fertilizer itina wapanda season A lengi wapanda pupa yuma kendo utabandita na fertilizer.
As the farmyard mechanized and chemical use increased, the story of seed was also about to change. Natural cycles of seed saving and sharing, which had kept business interests at bay, were challenged by a new breakthrough in seed breeding. New hybrid seeds, crosses of 2 inbred parent plants, produced genetically rich first-generation seeds, which would quickly lose vitality in their 2nd and 3rd season. This natural process of hybrid breakdown meant that farmers no longer benefited from replanting their seed. Instead, they had to buy new seed each season. This allowed international corporations to privatize and control the profits from seed. In the 1960s, these corporations began a worldwide proliferation of their new seeds. Recognizing global agriculture as an untapped and hugely profitable market, they set forth to, in effect, privatize the world's food system. Farmers around the world left their traditional farming systems in droves, buying into a dream of greater productivity, less labor, and more money. Monocrops like tea and coffee began to replace indigenous crop species, and subsistence farming on which the local community survived, was replaced by these new monocrops, grown to export. As global food output rose, traditional farmers were being seduced into this new system, despite seeing their production costs rise dramatically, as new seed, fertilizers and pesticides had to be purchased for each new season. And they found their new crops became subject to unpredictable international markets. These farmers had unknowingly bought into a system which was proving less resilient, less sustainable, more expensive, and ultimately detrimental to their survival.
Mbewisu inola wedi awanasio undumo wambe mbewisu wanewa wabanda tili mbuemwe buelengi ndwa ileta umetongia mondani nundu watongia mondani anandesia
tondu ikijo kule nicho ikurehe mbeca kule iringi gutwara murimo no tikuga ni kuria ro iria twariaga tene ri no njega gukira icio.
What do you think are the consequences of replacing many different varieties of crops, food crops actually, with a single crop that you cannot eat?
I think the real concern is that there is an increasing corporate control of the seed chain, and increasingly that means that a very small number of people are having a massive influence over the way in which farmers are able to farm. Traditional practices of saving seed are now under threat, and what that does essentially is to put corporate profit ahead of the ability of farmers to feed themselves and their communities.
Mbeu ina masiando itwa ngauri mbeu vasava nayo vava na mbiuntswa vadorenga vasapedzi ende ichikosina hela yavo yachikale avangarengi ngauri chadi uno vadova vana yo vone vadova unazvo ne yadova ikuita zvonevo zvimwe zvisairana na mbeu ndingazori kuri vathu vothe vashangu khavavuyelele kha zvahavo.
Pieces are linked together in two intertwined chains, forming a framework like a long spiral staircase. And in this molecule you have an essential quality of living matter, the ability to reproduce, to make copies of itself. And of all the molecules known to chemistry, only DNA and its relatives have this ability.
In 1953, Watson and Crick's discovery of the DNA double helix set the stage for one of science's most rapid advances: genetic engineering. The ability to move genes between cells, organisms, and species soon became feasible. In agriculture, the possibilities of such engineering seemed limitless. Higher yields, greater resilience to drought, better flavor, and quicker maturation. But as this new technology emerged, it was accompanied by fierce debate as to its ethics. Meanwhile, the most significant role of this new technology was being decided not in the field, but in the courtroom.
The United States Constitution gives Congress the power to pass laws relating to patents that gives its owner certain rights to an invention. Those include the right to keep others from making, using, selling, or offering for sale the invention that is described in the patent.
Intellectual property laws had long asserted that patents could be claimed on new and proven inventions. But in 1995, the World Trade Organization proposed a radical change in international law. Under pressure from global corporations, they ruled that microorganisms and microbiological processes already existing in nature could be patented. Under this new law, a seed could be genetically engineered to contain particular genes which could then be patented and privately owned.
As far as the seed is concerned, this leap in terms of property rights on life itself is the most serious threat to seeds of diversity, seeds of freedom that are in the hands of peasants.
A year later, the agrochemical giant Monsanto produced the first GM crop in America, Roundup Ready soya. which was quickly followed by GM.